Can India strengthen its resilience to extreme heat? My name is Vishwas Chitale. I lead the climate resilience team at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, which is also known as CEEW. So before we begin with the event, I would just like to set the context in terms of why talking about heat resilience is immensely important. I am sitting in Pune, which is maybe facing a lot of rainfall on the western coast of Maharashtra this week, but many of you might be in Delhi, which is going through a severe heat crisis. Maybe we can say that compared to last year, we have had a very mixed year this year, with a bit of rains in between and with some cloudy conditions, which might have reduced the impact of heat. But heat is here to stay, and that's why we have to highlight this issue and really start working on how do we address it. But when we want to address it, first of all, the important question is that do we even understand it in the way it is supposed to be? Do we understand what is extreme heat? Do we understand what is heat risk? And how many districts in India are facing severe to very severe kind of heat stress under the current situation? So that's what today's event is going to delve into, and we will be also launching our study on how can India strengthen its heat resilience? And there will be a technical presentation also by Shravan Prabhu, who is the lead author of the report. And we will also get into a panel discussion where we will discuss different aspects of heat, may it be with heat and health, may it be with heat and state level application, etc. So this is the overall plan for today. So I welcome all of you for joining us here. At CEW, in the climate resilience team, we focus also on democratizing the climatological data and tools. And while doing that, last year we published an analysis of sub-district level, changes in Indian monsoon for all the districts in India, and which got a lot of traction, which of course has a lot of sectoral implications as well. So similarly, then we thought that, okay, now it's time to understand how heat has changed in the past decade compared to the baseline of 30 years before that. And this is our attempt to understand and unpack all that findings in front of you. And also the report will be launched as I share. So we will also share a QR code with all of you. And also there is some exciting trailer launch today towards the end of the event. So please stay tuned with us for next 2 hours. We have a really exciting session for all of you. With that brief background, then now may I request Ms. Shalu Agarwal, Director of Programs at CEW, to deliver her welcome remarks. Just a little bit, introduction about Shalu. Shalu, as the Director of Programs at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, ensures strategic discipline across all program teams to stay on the course on their annual and multi-year strategies. So just last year, we have ventured into a 4-year strategy for CEW as an organization, and Shalu is keeping us all on track of achieving that for next 4 years. She has a decade-long experience of working on energy transition issues ranging from energy access and distributed RE to role of technology and market design in power sector reforms. Ms. Agarwal is a Yale Emerging Climate Leaders Fellow of 2024 and a Chevening Fellow of 2016. She has an MSc in Economics and Policy of Energy and Environment from UCL, University College London, and BTech in Electrical Engineering from IIT Roorkee. Shalu, please over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishwas. And a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's joining us from different parts of the world. It's a privilege to host you all. And it's my privilege to welcome you all on behalf of CEW to today's dialogue on how extreme heat is impacting India. A special thanks to our esteemed speakers for joining us today and for their commitment and leadership in making India climate resilient. Dr. Rajivan and Dr. Akash Srivastav and many others who will join us, in some due time. Thank you for joining us. As Vishwas mentioned, heat is no longer a weather pattern. It's increasingly afflicting and shaping the way we live, the way we plan our future, and the way we work. And globally, the world has already breached 1.5 degrees threshold. And the implications of this warming for India is particularly stark. I'm told how last year, 37 Indian cities crossed the 45 degrees mark. That's very, very hot. This February was also the hottest in over a century. And these are numbers, of course, we have been talking about. But what is more concerning is, as my colleagues' research tells us, is that high humidity and warmer nights, they're making heat more persistent and more dangerous across much of the Indian continent. It's not just about the rising daytime temperatures anymore, it's also about how longer heat waves, hotter nights, and slow recovery periods that we get as humans, they're quietly and steadily reshaping our risk landscape. And as is with the most disasters, the burden of this heat stress falls disproportionately on people who have the least coping abilities, be those farmers, be those informal workers, elderly people, children, pregnant women, and so on. And millions of people are living and working in conditions with limited cooling, poor ventilation, and limited protection from prolonged heat exposure. Just to share a few stats, I mean, from the latest round of household consumption expenditure survey 2024, we know that because of sustained efforts over the past decade, 99% of households now use electricity for lighting, but they won't say the same for cooling. The ownership of fans has risen to more than 90% now, but the use of ACs and coolers is still very limited. Just 30% Indians have ACs or coolers, and a big chunk of the peninsula remains without access to any meaningful cooling solution amidst very rapidly rising heat stress. And this concerns us all. And in many ways, this also makes heat an invisible disaster, which is difficult to see, but it's slowly affecting more and more people every year. And therefore, it's very important that we understand, what kind of heat are we really talking about? What kind of heat affects people more? And what kind of solutions, therefore, needs to be designed locally. And today we are proud that we are launching this study that looks at a granular level and brings visibility to this challenge by mapping heat stress across all the districts, 34 districts in the country. It uses 35 indicators that span across hazard, exposure, and vulnerability dimensions. And it moves beyond the traditional metrics to also look at nighttime heat, relative humidity, built up area expansion, and also socio-economic health indicators. And I'm sure, I mean, there will be, ways to improve the kind of research that we have done by including more metrics and using better data as it becomes available going forward. And much of our heat planning currently has focused on daytime temperatures. And it's important that, at least from the, emerging research that we are seeing, that we need to integrate these, more beyond heat or heat humidity based metrics in our early warning systems, in the way we are thinking about rescheduling working hours and creating solutions locally. And of course, this will require collaborative efforts across different stakeholder categories, be those government at the state level, disaster management authorities, be those climate researchers and urban planners, be those health systems, utilities, power utilities in particular, and financial institutions. We'll have to break multiple silos to come together to solve for this. And today's dialogue is our attempt and hope that we'll make progress in that direction. And a big thanks to our supporters, Rohini Nilekani Philanthropies and HSBC India for their generous support in carrying out this study. And I thank you all for joining us, and I look forward to the remarks and discussions by our esteemed speakers who have joined us. Thank you.
Thank you, Shalu. Thank you for that very well articulation of the issue as well as the challenges that lies ahead. And with that, may I request Dr. Madhavan Nair Rajivan, MN Rajivan sir, for delivering his keynote address. I think Professor Rajivan is not a new face definitely for all of us. He has more than 38 years of experience in research and operational duties related to weather and climate services. He served with the India Meteorological Departments for nearly 21 years. Also during 2015 till 2021, he worked as a secretary to the Government of India with the Ministry of Earth Sciences, one of the longest tenures as the secretary with MOES. He's currently, he was also associated briefly as the director of IITM Pune. And then now he's currently associated with the Atria University in Bangalore as the Vice Chancellor. Professor Rajivan's important research contributions definitely include monsoon variability, monsoon prediction, climate change, extreme weather events, and prediction of mesoscale systems. So may I request Dr. Eman Rajivan for delivering his keynote address. Over to you, sir. Can you please unmute, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Vishwas, for nice introduction. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this important event being organized by CEEW. And I'm happy to see that you are going to release a report on heat extreme. And also we are discussing how extreme heat is impacting India, assessing district level heat risk. And I should congratulate CEEW and especially Shravan Prabhu and his team for bringing out this important report. And I will briefly discuss about I will mostly discuss on science of heat stress or heat waves or heat stress, and rather than adaptation or mitigation issues. When you talk about heat, increasing heat, there are two important things we should remember. One is heat wave. Basically, it is a meteorological event defined by several consecutive days of unusually high maximum temperatures or minimum temperatures compared to normal. So it's basically a meteorological event, whereas heat stress is basically refers to the physiological strain on the human or animal due to both high temperatures, often combined with high humidity, wind speed, exposure duration, etc. So there is a difference between heat wave and heat stress. What is more important is the heat stress. So heat wave is a component of basically contributing to heat stress. People have done, there's no clear definition for heat wave. That people can define heat wave in many ways. IMD has definition of 45 days threshold, then 4 degree above normal, 5 degree above normal. Some people use the percentile like 90%, 95%. So you can use anyone. There's also an index combining maximum daytime temperature as well as nighttime temperatures. So you can use it. So if you really go with the IMD's definition, there are two critical areas where these heat waves are seen, observed. One is central and northwest India, including Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Delhi, Punjab area. Another is the coastal east coast of India, like the northern parts of Tamil Nadu as well as Andhra Pradesh and Odisha. These are the two critical areas. So if you have the data and if you really start analyzing the data, people have done a lot of analysis of the heat wave has increased or not. There's a substantial increase in heat wave duration, heat wave frequency of heat waves duration, and as well as the maximum duration during the last 30, 40 years, substantial increase. And we know how heat waves is occurring. We know the dynamics of it. We have done wonderful studies. So it's not a regional phenomenon. It is occurred. It is being triggered by large-scale global features like Rossby wave in the middle latitudes, Indian Ocean temperatures, etc. So, and these are all predictable. Thankfully, it's all predictable. So we have good understanding of how heat waves are. Our local condition like the dry soil, soil depletion of soil moisture, loss, there is not sufficient rain, etc., will add to the intensity of a heat wave. But heat wave generally is induced by large-scale atmospheric patterns of like Rossby waves, etc. And if you really see the how good the model forecasts are good. And we have done analysis, extensive analysis, how good is our model forecast for heat waves. And it's pretty good. Up to 5 to 6 days, we can really predict very well when the heat wave is going to occur and what could be the intensity and what could be the duration. Of course, there could be some errors. Probability of detection is very high, even at 7th day. So it's really a good sign. And heat wave, but unfortunately, we don't have any forecasting system. IMD also don't have any definition for heat stress. More people are more interested not just a heat wave because heat stress due to even a normal temperatures like 35, 37 degree, but addition of humidity will really increase to heat stress, and that is more harmful to the health, human health. So we need to really more understand about heat stress much more than heat waves. And not much studies are there in India addressing that issue. So there is no, for example, we don't have an index referring to heat stress, including by including heat dry bulb temperatures as well as relative humidity. We don't have. We have such indices in, for example, US, they call as a heat index, which is a parameter of temperature and humidity. The same heat index, we can use it here, but the thresholds are different because the physiological effects of heat stress on US people is different from what we have in India, physiological stress in India. So we need to develop a heat index exclusively for the Indian people. And we need to really monitor, and also we need to really predict heat stress much more than heat waves. So that is lacking. I think IMD is already working, but I appreciate that many more research institutions come forward and work on this heat stress in the index as well as its prediction capabilities. If we really talk about future projections of heat waves and heat stress, etc., alarming signal, very alarming signal. Heat waves are frequency and duration, and the maximum duration, intensity. I mean to say, intensity all going to increase in the next 30, 40 years. So heat wave and heat stress will stay with us for years together in the coming years. So there's no respite from heat for coming years. And country like India, we have different kinds of people. We have rich people who can afford an air conditioner, but we have very poor people. A few days back, I attended even organized by Chintan Foundation talking about urban poor in Delhi, how they are able to cope up with this heat stress. So the adaptation issues, the mitigation issues are much more complex than any other issue. So we need to really worry about it. So the future projections are very clearly say that heat stress is going to occur much more frequently in coming years. And people who are suffering from in summertime work performance is going to increase in future years, about 10 to 25, 30% decrease in summertime work performance in percentage for the coming years. The studies have really showed. And people who are dying, for example, the chance of people dying, 100 people or more dying, is much more critical when temperatures are on the order of 28. Summer temperatures are on the order of 30, and heat wave days are more than 40 now. So such kind of alarming signals are really coming out from research papers. So we need to really worry. So we need to have different policies on adapting, how we can adapt to heat stress. While making the such policies, we should address the large spectrum of our environment, our human environment in India, a societal structure. We have very poor people one side, and we have very rich people who can afford thousands of air conditioning in a home, and they cannot afford. Another stretch, we have poor people who cannot afford one meal per day. So we need to make a strategy to meet all the requirements together. So I will not go in detail about this. So my stress is that heat stress is more important than just heat wave. And heat stress includes temperatures as well as humidity and wind conditions, etc. So there's a gray area where we don't have a clear definition or index for the country. So we need to develop one first. Number two is we need to really develop a prediction capability. While making predictions, we have the district level forecast now, and we have even 5-kilometer model forecasts are going to come by next year. But this forecast should be really hyperlocal. Even within Delhi, the heat stress effect will be much more different from different places. It may not be same as at Rohini, or it's the same as RK Puram. So we need to really worry about hyperlocal forecasts of heat stress. So these are the two main gray areas where I want to stress upon. And such kind of reports also should come, and we, as an institution like CEEW, should really work on such kind of policies and come out with white papers, which ultimately will help the government. So I wish you all the best for CEEW, and I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajivan, for really highlighting that issue and why the nuanced information is very important, why we should go beyond just like heat wave as a phenomenon, but also to understand how heat risk or extreme heat impacts various kinds of population and why we need to understand it in detail. So that really sets the tone. Thank you for your keynote address. Now moving forward, I would like to play a video message by Ms. Sujata Sonik, who is the Chief Secretary of Maharashtra, who could not join us due to last minute things, but she has been very kind to share a video message with us that I'm going to play. But just a little bit of introduction about Ms. Sonik. Ms. Sonik is an IAS officer of 1987 batch and a civil servant with more than 3 decades of public policy and governance experience in healthcare, finance, education, and disaster management. She is a Takemi Fellow from Harvard University School of Public Health and is currently serving as the 45th Chief Secretary of State of Maharashtra. She is also a well-known figure in the topic of climate change and human health, especially when it comes to analyzing heat and health. I think she also has published various research articles in peer-reviewed journals, as well as she also speaks on various forums um, on the topic of heat and health. So just bear with me while I share my screen and present her video to you. It's not full screen yet, right, Shravan?
Yeah, we can see it, I think.
Okay.
Namaskar and warm greetings to all of you. I would have very much liked to join you in person and otherwise, if possible, also online. But it so happens that my day is already quite busy. So I thought at least I should send you a message which everyone can hear. I feel that this discussion is very important because this national dialogue that is being hosted by the Council of Energy, Environment and Water is a very important step forward. I'm actually very pleased to see that in our country we are having such dialogues, and it is becoming a forum where we are exchanging information with each other. The government is able to participate and listen to different voices, and organizations such as the CEEW are supporting a lot of the action that government wishes to take. That's how change is going to come. That's also how more evidence-based policy will come. So I think this is a very important step and a good initiative being taken. In the recent past, we have had a couple of such conferences at national level, and this is another one, and this is very, very welcome. So as we all know, heat and extreme heat is emerging as a important, urgent climate risk that requires attention. And we always talk about heat in isolation. We don't talk about heat with cooling. And we don't talk about making changes that ought to happen as our climate is changing around us. We still continue to have the same old systems of working and the way we go about our daily lives, where we're not making changes to bus shelters or the timing of schools or the kind of dress that is worn by people who are coming to work. All of these changes are going to make a big impact if we really are going to talk about managing heat. It is not only about 2 months of high temperatures. It is a year-long exercise that needs to be done so that every year you build your capacity to manage it better. So over the past year and more, I have had the opportunity to work very closely with CEEW. We are looking at more localized data-driven solutions. We are also looking at how our plans can be updated. Can we look at a new way of seeing things and not just copy paste from existing heat action plans? Our plans have been there for over 8-9 years now. But what next? What have we learned in these 8-9 years that can make a difference? And I think these kind of partnerships that we have with CEEW are proving to be very fruitful, mutually beneficial exercise. I commend them for the kind of research they do, the surveys they do, going into details. There has been a report recently how extreme heat is impacting India, assessing district level heat risk. In fact, many publications have come out. So many other organizations are also bringing out reports. And when you read those reports, you find that it's more descriptive. It's just a gathering of information from different stakeholders, both within the government and outside the government, or what different cities and different agencies are doing to manage heat. But it doesn't actually come out with a more detailed analysis of what worked and what didn't work. And I think that's where CEEW definitely has an edge. So with its 35 indicators spanning climatological changes, land use, green cover, population density, and socio-economic vulnerabilities, this report that I just mentioned provides critical insights that can drive effective planning and both at the state and at the national level. In Maharashtra, we are very particular about embedding heat resilience into our broader disaster risk reduction strategy and mitigation plans. In fact, the sister body to Mitra at the state level is also looking at how heat impact can be reduced, how livelihood losses can be compensated for, and what kind of changes in the existing way of doing our work can bring more relief to the people. And I think all of these discussions are very important going forward. So as you deliberate today on risk assessment, on better preparedness, early warning systems, and financial frameworks, I also encourage us to think beyond mitigation. It's not about just the immediate response, but it is also more long-term what systems we are building, where it is more inclusive, it is more equitable, it covers everybody, and there is something sustainable in it. I mean, every year before monsoon, there are a lot of heat conferences. I think this discussion actually needs to start at the end of each monsoon, not before a monsoon. I'm sure you will all agree with me. And hopefully moving forward, we in Government of Maharashtra can contribute something to this discussion and dialogue. We can be part of a growing group of stakeholders that works together, that exchanges information, that learns from each other, that is open about where the failures are and what can be done better. That's how the developed nations have reached where they have reached. And India can do better than that. So wishing you all the best and hoping that this dialogue can lead to something interesting and significant which is useful for all. Thank you so much.
Great. So we really acknowledge the efforts of Ms. Sonic for sharing her thoughts over a video. I think she really highlighted the points that are important to be looked at in terms of the diverse impacts of heat and also how state of Maharashtra is trying to put more efforts on addressing this particular challenge. So moving forward into the session, now I would like to request Shravan Prabhu, Program Associate from CEEW, and also the lead author of this report, to deliver a technical presentation of the study. Shravan is a program associate with the council, and his research primarily revolves around quantifying physical climate risks associated with extreme events, heat stress, and rainfall variability across various sectors. Some of his recent research includes decoding India's changing monsoon patterns, which was published last year. He holds a master's degree in geospatial technology from Symbiosis Institute of Geoinformatics, Pune, and a bachelor's degree in earth sciences from Goa University. Shravan, over to you.
Thank you, Vishwas, for the kind welcome, and thanks to Dr. Rajivan and Ms. Sonic for the very motivating remarks. I hope the screen is visible and I'm audible clearly. If you can give, yeah, thank you.
Yes, Shravan. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. So on behalf of my co-authors, Kirtana, Srishti, Divyanshu, and Vishwas, I am going to present our study. What are some of the key findings that are emerging and some of the recommendations and way forward on how can India strengthen its heat resilience. Before that, a brief introduction about CEEW. We are the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, one of Asia's leading not-for-profit policy research think tank. And we work on impacting sustainable development at scale with data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach. We are a 350 plus multidisciplinary team who work across multiple transformation pillars, like how can India achieve a low carbon economy? How can we shape the power markets of the future, while ensuring the quality of life of our citizens, that is through clean air, sustainable water, sustainable food systems. And we are a part of the climate resilience team, which is essentially an enabler to achieve all of this vision. And the topic for today, very interestingly, even in the council, we see it as a very cross-cutting theme. Like if we talk about extreme heat impacts our power markets, extreme heat impacts our water system, it impacts our food systems, and it definitely impacts our sustainable cooling targets as well. To begin the presentation, I would like to just mention this paragraph from a very recent book I read. It says the heat will kill you first. And I will not read the whole thing, but I will just highlight one last line, which says, you can imagine fire even before you see it. And I'm sure many of us who live in Delhi and North India last year specifically had this feeling where we are feeling the fire even before we could see it. And that is what we are seeing currently in terms of trends of extreme heat. Although this year, like Vishwas mentioned in the morning, we have been blessed with weather where there has been some cloudy, some thunderstorms, which have not made extreme heat that severe in the country, but still many states have already seen heat waves. And as Dr. Rajivan mentioned, heat stress can even occur when there is no heat wave. And many of the outdoor workers and the vulnerable populations are particularly at risk from this. When we look at the impacts of extreme heat, at the both global north and global south, of course, heat is impacting all the countries, but it's in the global south where extreme heat is emerging as the greatest risk to human health. IPCC's report in 2019 said that health-related risk arising from extreme heat could be one of the biggest climate risks that South Asia could face. If we just look at the numbers, by 2050, almost all the children in the world are expected to be exposed to frequent heat waves. India could lose equivalent of almost 35 million full-time jobs by 2030 due to heat stress, and almost 5 lakhs annual deaths occur from heat waves per year, out of which more than 60% are in South Asia alone. And of GDP, 4.5% of India's GDP could be at risk by 2030 due to the lost labor hours. But at the same time, if you look at India's journey towards heat resilience, India has emerged as a leader of heat resilience journey when we look at South Asia and the global South. Odisha was the first state in India to develop a heat action plan in 1999 after a severe heat wave occurred in the state. Then when in 2008, we launched our National Action Plan on Climate Change, it recognized the heat and health issues. Then Ahmedabad, as we all know, widely talked about heat action plan, which was South Asia's first city-level heat action plan. And studies suggest that after the plan was launched and implemented, almost 1,000 deaths were avoided due to the effective implementation of this. The National Disaster Management Authority in 2016 then developed guidelines for preparation of heat action plan for Indian states and cities to achieve zero casualty vision. And those were significant, simultaneously revised a couple of times, and also in 2019, the latest revision to also include long-term mitigation. Like Ms. Sonic also mentioned that we need to identify sustainable long-term mitigation solutions. How do we reduce disaster risk emerging from extreme heat? And after that, NDMA, IMD, and the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare have taken significant steps to increase the reach of heat action plans by collaboratively working with various cities. And we at CEEW, along with many other organizations like ourselves who are working in this space, have been supporting this initiative of enhancing heat resilience of India. And I think India's story in itself is a very unique story of how a collaborative model between not-for-profit, think tank, research academic, and the government is being developed. When we talk about that, how can a heat risk assessment further strengthen India's heat resilience? Firstly, there are many studies by our peers who have looked at how the heat action plans are designed, and what we find that more than 95% of the heat action plans that were reviewed lacked heat risk assessments. What this essentially does is, because heat is an invisible disaster, we can only map heat through data, and heat does not have any physical impacts like a cyclone or a flood where there is high wind or there is flooding. So it is very crucial that heat action plans undertake risk assessment, vulnerability assessment to firstly identify what is the heat hazard in that particular locality, and then how is that heat hazard impacting the exposure of people and the vulnerability. Not everyone who is also exposed is equally vulnerable. Some people are more vulnerable than others. For example, like age, gender, working conditions, all of these factors matter when we look at heat risk. We reviewed some of the open access state level heat action plans that were publicly available. We could get 15 state HAPs, and we found that only 2 conducted any sort of risk or vulnerability mapping. And this study that we have undertaken is an attempt to support our governments with this data that can be used to design better heat action plans that can be taken up for targeted actions. Second, heat does not impact everyone equally. The risk is not only whether heat wave occurs or not. It is not only whether you are exposed to it or not. It is the heat occurrence, the heat hazard, combined with the exposure and the underlying vulnerabilities. But when we looked at the literature, we found that majority of the studies have looked at these things in silos. Like climate, there are many climatological studies which examine how the heat wave patterns have changed over the country, how extreme heat patterns have changed, and how the future projections will be. There are some studies which only look at what will be the productivity loss because of exposure of outdoor workers to this heat. And there are certain vulnerability related studies as well. We look at where are the socio-economic vulnerabilities highest. But this is our attempt to kind of do a composite risk assessment of these three factors to derive this heat risk. And third and very important step is that heat waves last year were made eligible for funding under the State Disaster Mitigation Fund. To briefly explain what this means, India's disaster risk management funding has basically two main windows. One is called the State Disaster Response Fund, which looks at immediate response, relief, preparedness related aspects, and also recovery and reconstruction. But the mitigation fund is the one which looks at really those long-term solutions that can be taken up to reduce the risk in the longer horizon. And now heat waves, as we know, are now eligible for funding under the State Disaster Mitigation Fund. And one of the crucial aspects to effectively take or implement certain solutions is granular understanding of the hazard, vulnerability, and the risk associated with that hazard at a local level. To talk about the research questions, we had 4 key research questions or objectives. The first was, how are the daytime and nighttime heat extremes changing in India at a district level? And how do factors like relative humidity and lower rainfall influence this trend? Second is, who is most exposed to these changing patterns and what are the vulnerabilities associated with this? And what are the present risks from extreme heat across all the districts of India? And then what are the drivers of this risk? Like what is causing this heat risk? Because that will differ from one region to another. Like what might be causing heat risk in a certain district? It might be that the district is not facing that much heat, but it is because entire district is built up area. Heat is getting trapped, urban heat island effects are occurring, and that is leading to heat risk. But in certain other district, it might be that there is a very lack of green space. So those kind of drivers, we had this is our attempt to identify that. And along with the report, we have also launched an annexure which provides state-wise handbooks, state and UT level handbooks of state-wise maps, state-wise heat risk score, and ranking of districts on this heat risk index that we have developed, which can support SDMAs, particularly state disaster management authorities, state emergency operation centers, and the district level authorities in the usage in the heat action plans and other plans such as the state action plan on climate change and human health and the district action plan on climate change and human health. So the methodology, I will briefly explain the methodology, but if you want more details of it, that can be found in the report, for which we will be soon sharing the QR code as well. So the first step of our methodology was defining the objective and selection of the risk assessment framework. And for our study, we used the IPCC's AR5 risk assessment framework. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is a global intergovernmental body which looks at the scientific aspects of climate change and decides on the global accepted frameworks. So we have used the latest risk assessment framework, which defines risk as a function of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. Then the second aspect was to select a long list of indicators that will constitute heat hazard, heat exposure, and heat vulnerability. And this was done based on a systemic literature review and more importantly, data availability, because our study looks at heat risk across all the 734 districts of India. These 734 districts of India are defined by the Survey of India shapefile, which is the official shapefile for our usage as of 2022. So we have used that shapefile, and the data availability across all the districts was a crucial aspect for the selection of indicators along with literature review. We reviewed more than 30 global papers for coming with this indicator list. Particularly talking in the Indian context, we looked at the National Disaster Management Plan of 2019, which defines for each hazard what are the different type of vulnerabilities, exposures, and indicators. We also looked at the NDMA guidelines for heat action plans of 2019. We looked at heat action plans that we could find in the public domain. And the Department of Science and Technology has also published India-specific climate vulnerability index, which looks at certain socio-economic related aspects of vulnerability, which is taken as a foundational base for coming up with indicators on vulnerability. and other studies which have taken place in India, such as Azhar et al. In 2017. Then to assign weightage to these different indicators and to finalize them, we took a kind of a semi-quantitative approach called as the analytical hierarchy process through stakeholder consultation. We consulted with various experts in the field coming from think tanks, research, academia, and other domains. And it was a very multidisciplinary team. The experts constituted also from climate sciences, disaster management, public health, and others. After this, the unified data sheets were developed for all districts for hazard, exposure, and vulnerability separately. And then the data was normalized based on the relation to risk. Normalization is very important because many of our indicators have different scales and different units. So to bring them on a common scale, we normalized it based on direct or indirect relation. And then the weightages were assigned and the individual subcomponents were calculated, based on which the final composite heat risk index has been calculated in our study. To talk about the framework that we have used the IPCC's AR5 framework, which defines risk as a function of hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. As we can see from the equation, this is the equation that is there. So hazard essentially refers to the potential occurrence of a climate-related physical event. So hazard only looks at the frequency, intensity, duration, and spatial extent purely from a climatological or meteorological perspective, such as the occurrence of very hot days, occurrence of very warm nights, or occurrence of relative humidity. Whereas exposure refers to what is exposed. So in our study, we only look at exposures of lives and livelihoods. That is one of also the limitations of our study, is that we do not look at exposure of various sectors. Like we do not go into exposure of power sector or exposure of agriculture sector. And that is one more use case of the study that we want our audience to take forward along with the data that we have made available. But here we are essentially looking at the exposure of the population. Vulnerability consists of two further subcategories. One is called sensitivity. Even within this exposure, even if the entire population is exposed, even within that, certain population is more sensitive than others. So it is a degree to which a population or system is affected by that climate hazard, and it is influenced by various factors like age, health status, occupation, or housing type. And lastly, we have adaptive capacity, which is the ability of the communities or systems to adapt to these hazards and recover from them. And it is largely shaped by socio-economic status, access to certain types of resources, infrastructure, and governance. In the next few slides, I'll briefly go through the indicators that we have selected as well as the weightages that have been assigned. But more details along with the rationale, what is the data source, what is the everything is available in the report, and I request everyone to go through it in detail. Once the indicators were selected, we did a kind of a expert consultation through AHP method, and the survey consisted of more than 326 questions based on pairwise metrics comparison. And we are actually very, very grateful to all the experts who supported us in this exercise. I know it has taken a lot of effort, a lot of time, hours of time to go through a survey which is more than 326 questions. And the expert group consisted of a multi-diverse, multidisciplinary team. And we also did a virtual consultation with the experts in December 2024, and then multiple other offline consultations as well. And then finally, the responses were aggregated and the consistency ratio was calculated. So in simple terms, consistency ratio basically tells us how consistent the responses, all the responses that are received are across for all the indicators. So it should be below than 10, which means that the responses are consistent. And we can see that our consistency ratio was almost below 5, which means that most of the responses that we received were very consistent in how they perceived different indicators and their relative importance to heat risk calculation. So starting with indicators used for heat hazard, we used total of 12 indicators, which tried to capture the frequency, intensity, and duration of heat hazard. All three are very important, along with compounding factors like humidity and reduced rainfall. I would like to place my special gratitude and thanks to the India Meteorological Department, the National Center for Medium Range Forecasting, and the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Because of their data democratization efforts, that we are able to get this IMDAA reanalysis data, which is at a 12-kilometer resolution, one of the finest long-term climate data that is available for the Indian subcontinent. And we took months of March to June, which essentially signals the summer months where we see these heat extremes during 1982 to 2022. And what we essentially did was we calculated the changes in all of these indicators in the last decade and compared that to the climate baseline. So 1982 to 2011 is regarded as the climate baseline. And we tried to assess how the changes have happened in the last 1 decade compared to this baseline. And all the trends that we witnessed were also validated through Mann-Kendall statistical significance test at a 95% confidence level. So if you look at the indicators, we selected increase in frequency of very hot days, increase in frequency of very warm nights, relative humidity, duration of hot spells, decrease in diurnal temperature range. So diurnal temperature range essentially is the difference between the daytime high and the nighttime low. We also looked at the historical peak daytime and nighttime temperatures that have occurred. Dr. Rajivan mentioned in his morning address that if we look at heat wave also from IMD criteria and purely looking at from extremes, the Rajasthan, the entire North Indian belt and some peninsular India is most prone to it. And this is also where we have seen in the past peak daytime temperatures going. To look at the intensity of heat, we also looked at increase in average of 10 hottest days and 10 hottest nights. And we looked at the onset and withdrawal of heat season for the months of March and June. And we also looked at total summer rainfall, like what has been the change in total summer rainfall. And the weights have been assigned based on the AHP exercise that was conducted with multiple experts. For exposure, we looked at population density, building density, and district gross domestic product. We mapped building density for the entire country at a 500-meter resolution using Google building footprint data to assess how many buildings were there in almost every 500 square meter boxes. Population density data was taken again from census 2011 projections. That is one more limitation is that for population related indicators, we had to still rely on census because that is the latest official data that is available to us. And this was taken as an exposure indicator. Now to look at sensitivity related indicators, we looked at the labor population, total labor population in each district. We looked at the total number of disastrous heat wave days. As many of us who are working in this space of heat and health might know that, very granular or very validated district level, granular level data on heat related mortalities has been a challenge for the entire sector. So we looked at the IMD vulnerability atlas, which classifies heat wave days that have at least led to one death. So that is a kind of a proxy that we have used in that sense to come to some proxy level of the disastrous heat wave days that have occurred in the past. We mapped the change in land use and land cover from 2005 to 2023 at a 30-meter resolution across the country to look at two things. One, what has been the change in built up? That is, where has the built up expanded rapidly? Another thing is if there is any decrease in the vegetation cover. And that was also used as one more indicator for landscape sensitivity. We looked at young population, old population. We know these are the two groups which are most vulnerable to extreme heat. We know that marginalized communities like scheduled caste, scheduled tribe are more vulnerable and more sensitive. We looked at the sex ratio as well. We looked at household members with pre-existing non-communicable diseases, which was taken from the NFHS 5 data. And this is very important because this also gives us an estimate of what are the health-related aspects. As we know, those who already have non-communicable diseases are likely to be more impacted from extreme heat. We looked at persons with disabilities, marginal workers, and temporary and semi-permanent houses for coming up with the sensitivity-related indicators. For adaptive capacity, we looked at literacy rate, population with electricity access, improved water drinking access within premises. This was taken from the NSSO data. We mapped the green spaces based on satellite data using an index called as normalized difference vegetation index across all the district at 30-meter resolution. Similarly, the water infrastructure or water resources like ponds, lakes, rivers in each district, which help reduce the impact of extreme heat, were mapped across all the districts. Using the official government sources on number of PHCs, SHCs, and other healthcare related facilities, we compiled 3 to 5 sources to come up with a very robust GIS data of healthcare centers, which was then aggregated at district level to identify how many healthcare centers exist per 1,000 population. And this data was also used in our previous study, which came out earlier last year on mapping risk to the critical health infrastructure on extreme weather events. We looked at workers under Manrega and also looked at the health insurance based on the PMJAY dashboard, which gives us district level enrollment numbers. And these indicators more or less were used to assess the adaptive capacity as related aspects. I will now come to the key findings of the study. So the flow will be that firstly, I will go through what are some of the emerging trends across hazard, exposure, and vulnerability. And we have only highlighted the key findings. The detailed findings are available in the report again. And at the end, we will also look at the overall heat risk map for India at district level. Firstly, if we look at purely climatological data, if we look at very hot days are defined as days when the threshold for very hot days is actually the 95th percentile of the climate baseline on a 5-day window, which means that the threshold for every district is based on what has been the conditions in that particular district. Like Dr. Rajivan mentioned again in his address, very important point that there are many indices to look at heat hazard, and there is no common definition of what a heat hazard is. IMD has a criteria for India, but that is mostly used at a station level for forecasting purposes. And IMD is also providing now forecast based on percentile approach, which Dr. Akhil will speak more about in the next panel discussion. So we have used the percentile approach here, which also gives us an estimate of how the trends are changing, looking at the acclimatization levels of the population. And what we find is there has been some increase of up to 3 to 6 days on an average across the country on number of very hot days in the last decade during summer compared to the climate baseline. 28% of Indian districts have seen actually more than 5 very hot days than before. Highest increase, if you purely look at like region-specific threshold, is seen in Himalayas and other western coast as well. Also in northeastern, we are seeing that northeastern states are heating up and very hot days are being seen there as well. Although on the risk map, we find that the risk is very low in this region because of population-related exposure and vulnerability-related aspects. And when we look at the average daytime temperature, we found that there was a slight decrease along the North India, but we did not find any significant decrease in very hot days in the study. And this, of course, as we know, long-term trend in very hot days have led to recent heat waves, as we know them in recent years, such as in 2013, 2016, and the last year heat wave, which we are all aware of. But more concerningly, while very hot days have increased, we are finding that the increase in the magnitude of very warm nights is much more than that. While we see only 28% of districts had seen more than 5 very hot days in last decade compared to baseline, very warm nights have increased in almost 70% of Indian districts by more than 5. And we are seeing that the most pronounced trends of very warm nights are occurring in districts which are urbanized or where we can say the population is more than 10 lakhs. If I give you some examples, then Mumbai has seen 15 more very warm nights in the last decade, Delhi 6, Jaipur 7, Chennai 4. One of the reasons in addition to climate change for this has been studied and is known is the urban heat island phenomenon. Because what happens is that due to high concrete, the heat is trapped during the day and released it at night. And this finding suggests a very clear trend of that emerging. And what warmer nights essentially do is they do not allow the human body to cool down from the daytime high. And that has a severe impact not only on the sleep, but also on the health risk of different population segments. To look at changes in compounding factor, we saw that the North India, specifically the Indo-Gangetic plains, have seen an increase in relative humidity. We did not use the heat index, which is a very commonly used heat index, because Dr. Rajivan had mentioned very nicely that this is an American heat index and it is not validated for India. Although IMD has been giving forecasts based on this, but on an experimental basis. So we have not used the heat index, but we looked at the change in average relative humidity, and there is a kind of an inverse relation of humidity with temperature. Because when we see the highest humidity, which is generally in early mornings, the temperature is little lower. But as we also found now that the warm nights are increasing, so that is also very important for us to look at the diurnal variation of the relative humidity as well. How relative humidity impacts? Very simply, beyond 37 degrees Celsius, when the human body crosses 37 degrees Celsius, we sweat to cool our bodies. When there is high heat and there is humidity, this sweating does not take place. And this can lead to occurrence of certain heat-related illnesses, such as heat stroke, at a much faster rate. And again, coming to my point that heat risk is not just temperature or relative humidity. Dense population, buildings, and existing socio-economic and health vulnerabilities make it worse. When we looked at the exposure of population, we found that the districts in the Indo-Gangetic Plain and urbanized districts such as Mumbai, Delhi are most exposed due to high population density. We interestingly found that built-up areas have increased in almost all the districts of India when we compare 2005 and 2023, which might intensify the heat retention in different cities and districts. To look at vulnerability-related aspects, we found that districts in Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Haryana, Punjab, Chhattisgarh, Bihar, and UP, among other states, showed high to very high vulnerability, mostly due to certain other vulnerability indicators and sensitivity indicators that were listed in the previous slide. In certain districts, we found that the vulnerability was lower, which also brings down risk. We will see in the next few slides, such as certain districts in northern Odisha, for example, or the northeastern India, or Ladakh, Union Territory of Ladakh, and Himalayan states. The vulnerability and exposure is fairly lower, so that brings down the risk. And this is the overall risk finding that we have from the study. I will pause for a couple of seconds here to explain this. When we categorize the districts into very high, high, moderate, low, and very low, we found that 151 districts fell in the very high risk category, 266 districts fell in the high risk category, 201 in the moderate category, 78 and 36 in the low and very low heat risk category. And aggregating the high and very high, we find that 57% of Indian districts, which are essentially home to 76% of our total population, fall in high and very high risk category. If I pick up some regional trends of where the risk is highest, on the western coast, essentially, we are seeing that many of the districts are falling in high and very high risk category. Also, one of the regions where we see a significant trend is seen on both very hot days and very warm nights. Traditionally, heat wave prone regions, we already know Vidarbha region is highly prone to heat wave. Rajasthan, Gujarat, these are all very highly prone. Andhra Pradesh as well, these are all very highly heat prone regions are coming in the high to very high risk category. Delhi also, we are seeing that the risk is fairly high to very high, and many districts in the Indo-Gangetic Plains, which are also rural districts, fall in the high to very high risk category. So moving on to talk also about the utility of the study. This is just a snapshot of how the handbook looks like, and the handbooks are provided in Annexure 1, which identify within a state what is the district, what is the risk score, what is the risk category, and also provides a ranking of states that the state disaster management authorities can use for different states and UTs to plan accordingly. To talk about recommendations and way forward based on the findings. First, we recommend that states, districts, and cities should move beyond the focus only on daytime temperature and also incorporate these additional dimensions of warm nights, humidity, demographic pattern, and health vulnerabilities in design of their heat action plans that many states, cities, and districts are currently preparing. As we have already seen the trends, these are all very important aspects that now need to be considered when planning for heat risk. IMD is already giving percentile-based nighttime and daytime temperature exceedance level warnings, hot and humid weather warnings, which many states are not aware of, in addition to the official heatwave criteria. And Dr. Akhil will talk more about this in his session, but it's very important that these additional aspects or additional products from IMD are integrated into the planning processes for different sectors, especially the health sector. Second, I had already mentioned that SDMF is now eligible for heat waves, which means that states can tap into this fund for multiple structural solutions and non-structural solutions. And the annexures can be used, the district level heat risk analysis can be used to develop these proposals for different solutions aligned with the guidelines provided by NDMA. Third, we recommend that states with more than 50% of their districts falling in high to very high risk category could consider notifying heat as a state notified disaster. What this will essentially do is this will unlock an additional 10% of funding from SDRF. But this funding can only be used for ex gratia payment for heat-related fatalities, compensation for crop loss, livestock loss, and for certain capacity building initiatives under the preparedness window of this fund. Some states in recent time like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Madhya Pradesh have already notified it as a state-specific disaster, and others could follow the suit. One very important recommendation is that also to look at heat insurance mechanisms, because what we found was that although, we found that many states saw heat risk very high to very high, that would significantly reduce the pooling capabilities for heat risk insurance. But we already have successful pilots like Nagaland recently developed a parametric insurance product for rainfall-based parameters. For heat, because it is an invisible disaster, and because now we have such a good level of data available, parametric heat insurance should be one of the ways to go forward to look at the financial resilience to heat-induced livelihood losses. And lastly, while during the course of the study, when we looked at the adaptive capacity of multiple districts, we wanted to actually review all the heat action plans at the district level. But unfortunately, we could not find heat action plans in the public domain. And when we interacted with multiple states, we understand that many districts in India have developed their HAPs, but those are not in public domain. So we could not assess the institutional capacity of the HAPs. And it is our recommendation for the center, mostly NDMA and NIDM, if we can have a national repository of heat action plans, which can be updated annually or biannually by the respective SDMAs. What this will do is this will help us assess the institutional capacity and identify design gaps, particularly in this main policy that guides the entire heat action across the country. Just lastly, I will mention about our upcoming product or upcoming tool, which is called the Climate Resilient Atlas. This tool is part of our vision to democratize climate risk information for India. This tool will provide free data, like I have shown previously, about heat risk and more than 40 temperature and rainfall indices, not only the historical, but also the future projection. It will have sector-specific modules and also Gen AI integrated capabilities. And this tool will be soon out for everyone to use. And we recommend everyone to use this data. Reach out to us if you have any queries on the methodology, any suggestions, any more metrics or indicators that we can include. And really, we want to see this study being used and the data being used for multi-sectoral analysis, multi-sectoral risk assessment, sectoral heat action plans, and overall looking at how different sectors will be impacted by extreme heat. And that is it from my end. The study is live, and you can scan the QR code to download the study and read the full report. And any feedback, any comments, please reach out to us on the email ID mentioned in the study.
Thank you, Shravan.
I will
So,
just,
yes, please go ahead.
yeah, before I will just quickly mention something that we have something very exciting coming up at 12 o'clock. So requesting all our audience to stay tuned for this trailer launch of India's Heatwave Heroes. This is a 5 video series that we are coming up with, where we have documented some of the local solutions that are happening across the country, across various cities. And the trailer will be launched today, and the films will be very soon launched, which highlight not only the solutions, but what are the challenges in implementing these solutions, what is the finance required, and how can these solutions be scaled up.
Thank you, Shravan. This was a very detailed presentation, but also more findings are there in the report itself. And I request all of you to scan the QR code if you are interested in downloading the report. And also the report will be available on CEEW's website on our climate resilience page for download. If there are any specific questions, etc., you can always reach out to us over email, and we'll be happy to address those queries. So I think this marks the end of our first session, the inaugural session of today's event. And may I request also all the panelists to switch on their cameras so we can take a virtual group photo before we get into the panel, next panel discussion. So may I request also if yes, and and a nice smile as well. Just give me a moment while I rename some of you. Sorry for that inconvenience. But I think just in a minute, we should be able to done with that, and we can take a group photo, nice group photo, and then we can proceed with the next session. I will give you a heads up, Shrutika.
Please come a little closer.
Okay, great.
1 second.
The young man in the check shirt is losing his right arm in the photograph. Now it's better.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we then now enter into the next session. Thank you, Dr. Rajivan, for joining us despite your busy schedule, and we will continue with the panel discussion. So now it gives me a great pleasure to welcome our panelists today who have joined us as discussant from very diverse backgrounds. I would like to first introduce Mr. Safi Ehsan Rizvi, who is currently with the NDMA, as well as who has recently taken over a charge of Executive Director at NIDM as well. Shri Safi Ehsan Rizvi is an officer of 1989 batch of IPS of the Uttar Pradesh cadre. After having active policing assignments in the state of Uttar Pradesh, he joined the security establishment in the Government of India in 2006. Then Shri Rizvi joined National Disaster Management Authority in July 2023. At NDMA, he looks after mitigation vertical, NDMA's coordinating body, co-DRR, and its geospatial interactions. He also drives NDMA's initiatives on disaster risk financing and new technology. And as I highlighted, since April 30th this year, he has taken an additional charge of Executive Director at NIDM as well. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Then I would like to welcome Dr. Akash Srivastav from National Program on Climate Change and Human Health under Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Dr. Srivastav is presently the head of Center for Environmental Health and Occupational Health, Climate Change and Health at NCDC. This center is the technical agency for implementation of the Ministry of Health's National Program on Climate Change and Human Health under the National Health Mission umbrella. Prior to NCDC, he has served in other organizations, including Indian Council of Medical Research, Indian Armed Forces, and the UNICEF. He has been a part of the founding team of Integrated Disease Surveillance Program at NCDC and served the epidemiology division at NCDC in the past. Thank you, Dr. Srivastava, for joining us. Then we move on to Dr. Ms. Sudha Raman. I would like to welcome Sudha Raman from State Planning Commission, Government of Tamil Nadu. Ms. Raman is an officer in the Indian Forest Service, currently posted in Tamil Nadu. Presently, she serves as the Member Secretary of the State Planning Commission in Tamil Nadu. Her role involves extensive work in evaluations and assessment studies, policy formulations, and innovation in governance, particularly through the Tamil Nadu Innovative Initiatives, TANI projects, environmental sustainability and community welfare initiatives. She has led the efforts in sustainable land use planning, climate mitigation, and activities related to the sustainable development goals for the state of Tamil Nadu. She has been recognized with several prestigious awards, including the Dr. Kalam Innovation in Governance Award, Prani Mitra Award from MOFCC, and also Certificate of Appreciation by Tamil Nadu Forest Department as well. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us for this panel discussion. I would like to also welcome Dr. Akhil Srivastav from India Meteorological Department. Dr. Srivastav is a scientist at the IMD under Ministry of Earth Sciences, Government of India. He specializes in heat wave and cold wave forecasting services, numerical weather prediction, and mesoscale modeling. His research focuses on impact-based forecasting of heat waves, forecasting of tropical cyclones, and nowcast modeling. He has co-authored studies on extreme weather events in India, including hot weather hazards and cyclone prediction. Mr. Srivastava has been actively involved in IMD's initiatives, contributing to discussions on heatwave monitoring, forecasting, and preparedness and anticipatory actions. So with that, I would like to begin with our panel discussion. And then I will begin with Dr. Akhil Srivastava, since he's coming from the IMD, and we all have been very facing very complex climatic situations, weather situations in the country right now. So I will begin with you, Dr. Akhil. This year we have experienced a bit of mix of weather in last couple of months. So last year, if you remember, we were facing a severe heat wave across various states in India. and that was very severe compared to what we had experienced in 2023. So can you shed some light on what is this anomaly in this summer and what causes such abnormal climatic phenomena?
See, with respect to heat waves, we are seeing this kind of anomaly in past years also. It's not only a recent phenomena for past 2 or 3 years. If we see the data, particularly from recent past from 2010 onwards, you can see in 2010 approximately when we defined heat wave on a meteorological subdivision, we had more than 500 days of heat waves, approximately 578 days of heat waves in 2010. Then consistently for next around 10 years or so, we had got heat waves less than for 200 days, as per in meteorological subdivision wise days. In 2022, again we had got a spike of 455 days. 2023 we had got a lower number, 217, and 2024 again it was 536, which was I think second highest after 2010. So this is basically we have got a lot of factors which influence such kind of heat wave activity over the country. Last year, if you remember, we have got strong El Nino conditions, which is known to have caused a lot of heat wave over Indian region. This in current year, we have got neutral El Nino conditions, neutral IOD conditions, which are not supporting in a large scale the heat waves which we have seen during the previous year. In addition to that, in the current year, if you see, we are regularly seeing a lot of thunderstorm activities across the country during entire pre-monsoon season. So what is actually happening? We are not seeing a lot of temperatures getting built up across the country, and as soon as some temperature rises, we get some mesoscale activity, some thunderstorm activity, and temperature again gets cools down. Also, if we see in the bigger picture, we don't see a lot of the in planetary scale movement. Also, these Osby waves, or you can say the jet streams, we're not seeing blocking high kind of conditions which were seen in the last year. If you see this particular area, we have not seen a consistent or a persistent spell. And during last year, if you remember, we have got more than, if I remember correctly, more than 30 days of heat waves during summer season in eastern parts of the country, including Odisha and West Bengal. So basically, the factors, the large-scale factors like El Nino and those blocking highs, they were not present this year to support those conditions. Additionally, we have got a lot of thunderstorm activities which brought a lot of rainfall, associated with the thunderstorm, which caused the drop in the temperatures, and we didn't see the activities like last year. However, I would like to bring over here that we have to be very cautious. The number of heat wave days doesn't always define its intensity and its impact. If you remember 2015, where we have seen the lot of deaths, which are reported in CRP data also over the central and eastern parts, particularly over Andhra Pradesh and adjoining areas. The number of heat wave days was only 161 across the country on meteorological subdivision days we are talking about. So they were approximately around 1/3 of what we saw last year, but we have got a large number of deaths which were reported. So we have to take into consideration that also it's not only the number of days, but also the aggravating factors which may have higher impact on the general public.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Akhil, for sharing that experience that this is not only this year or recent years, but it has been happening in the past. But since you touched upon the point of heat and health impacts, so then I would like to request Dr. Akash Srivastav to come in on this. So Dr. Srivastav, I mean, there is a national level portal under NPCCHH where states are supposed to report on heat-related illnesses. Would you like to highlight some of the challenges that the states or cities have been facing in report or recording the heat-related illnesses at their level? And also, how can we enhance the capacity of health sector to be prepared for ensuring high-quality data repository when we talk about analyzing the impacts of heat and health?
Okay, so there are two aspects to it that I like to bring into the knowledge of the audience. The one is that the impact of heat on human health would range all the way from simple presentations like someone having a heat rash to all the way to a serious presentation like a heat stroke, or that's happening on account of heat exposure. Now, if you look at the volume, you will hardly find that the minor presentations would be in larger volume compared to severe presentations. Now, the point is that how do we record that information? As of now in India, we do not have an electronic system of recording what the doctor and patient interactions are. So largely a lot of what happens at the clinics doesn't get recorded in an electronic system to be captured in some database, and it's on a paper base mostly, and it's left unrecorded for purposes of repository. Well, India is advancing. There is a digital health mission in India now, and things are improving, and it's likely sometime that India would be able to capture the entire spectrum of illnesses that are getting recorded in the hospitals or in the clinics that the patient attend. Maybe at that point of time, we will actually be able to understand how big is the impact of heat, inclusive of all the small to big illnesses that comes into the various clinics. In the meanwhile, what we in health systems or the public health systems do is, in order to take a certain action, design a surveillance system. Surveillance systems have to have an end, that is, collection of data only for the purpose of action. We do not collect the data if there is no potential act of action to be taken to it. Therefore, in this surveillance system that we have in place under the National Program on Climate Change and Human Health, we across the India, more than 48,000 healthcare facilities collect data only on heat stroke condition. Heat stroke is a severe condition, and eventually, if not treated in the early time, within the first 30 minutes, it's likely to result in death of a patient. And that's the action, because we have to understand and ensure that we are saving the patient's life. Now, what is the challenge in collecting that information? The challenge is that the heat stroke is a diagnosis that cannot be ascertained using any specific markers. So there is no lab marker or any specific signs and symptoms that will be exactly pinpoint to it. It's mostly a clinical diagnosis based on the spectrum of presentation that is seen with a couple of signs and symptoms that a clinician has to assess and take care of. So it is left to the clinical judgment to suggest whether it is a heat stroke case or not. He has to rule out all other conditions that are likely to present in a similar fashion to the clinician. Now, in such a dilemma, when a clinician has to make a call, the clinician should be given the freedom to exercise his clinical judgment. When there are scenarios where you have administration, I'm just giving you one of the many things that's happened, just like a scenario in which administration finds that there is a compensation attached to every patient who ends up in such serious scenario, it is likely to influence the judgment of the doctor himself, that he will be in some way trying to avoid such clinical judgment. So in specific diagnosis where a clinical judgment is very important, it is very important that the doctor has the full freedom to exercise the judgment. Then only reporting heat strokes will be going to be easy for the doctor to happen. So that's a sort of a challenge that comes in the clinical setting. However, once the diagnosis is recorded, then there is another scenario of the data getting recorded and data getting transmitted to the systems. Of course, now we have an IHIP, an International Health Information Platform, which has made it much easier as far as recording and transmission of the data is concerned. So once we get a data recorded as a heat stroke across in any clinics of these 48,000 healthcare facilities of public health systems, we get it transmitted and gets recorded into the IHIP portal. So that is being taken care of. Your question next was about the heat health early warning system. Now, I heard in today's presentation, there was all about discussions about how meteorological parameters are used for early warning systems. If you're going to say heat health, then we have to exactly understand what is the health component that is going to be relevant. I know, of course, in some studies that has been taken up, for example, in Ahmedabad or elsewhere, where thresholds have been identified for how heat led to death of number of people. Yes, that would be a very good indicator. And I think efforts are being made by various scientists to understand these thresholds for some of the cities of the country. But yes, again, then the challenge here comes is about getting the death data. You have to understand that death and birth and deaths are recorded in an entirely different system than how disease diagnoses are recorded. It's through the recording of vital statistics department. They are the ones, and mostly it falls under the domains of the municipal corporation. So that's another challenging area of how that data is being collated into the country. We hear how the RGI has to take a lot of work over years to be able to take sometimes 2 to 3 years delay in releasing the RGI report. But yes, once the debt data becomes available, that would be an easy tool to understand historically what is the relationship between debt and heat exposure in a particular city to identify heat health threshold and thus the heat health system. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Srivastava, for very well elaborating the challenges as well as how it should be taken as a way forward in some cases as well. So thank you for your intervention. Now may I request Dr. Safi Ehsan Rizvi to shed some light on utility of State Disaster Mitigation Fund, which has been now since last year's amendment has been open for heat wave mitigation projects as well. So, sir, I would like to ask you whether you have come across any challenges discussed with the states in preparing proposals for long-term heat wave mitigation projects under SDMF, and how we can streamline this process, and how can researchers and technical institutions provide targeted support to states and cities in utilizing the SDMF more effectively? Because we all understand that heat is not just a response-oriented challenge, but we really have to put efforts in long-term mitigation as well. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Vishwas. First of all, let me congratulate CEEW and the entire team that has worked on this report. It is quite amazing. And the best part about your report, this one and the one last year on the monsoons, is that you've used government-provided data from IMD. You have used for hazard, vulnerability, and exposure largely verified, credible government data. And you have used so many such indicators, not just one. You've basically shown the path to researchers, not just to policymakers, but to researchers, that how much data is available. People keep cribbing there's no data. You've shown how much data is available, how much verified data is available, and how much of it can be used and how it can be put up in a presentable format. Like your just first 3 slides of maps very clearly shows that there is a rise in warm days, 28% districts, and very bigger rise in warm nights, 72% districts. I mean, these two are amazing facts. And the third one, which I take away from here, which is going to be seared in my memory, is that relative humidity is also rising from about 5 to 8 or 9% in most of the districts, especially in the north. And all 3 together, you are coming up with that one killer line which says that the urban heat islands are causing the primary problem of increasing heat stress in the cities. So this is an amazing study, and we will definitely use it for our purposes as we use the monsoon study. As regards the challenges you say with regard to HAPs, the challenge is that getting the states to, not just the states, but the districts to have their own heat action plans. Essentially, you need them in the cities. Now, efforts by organizations such as yours and some others have led to good quality HAPs coming up. But as you've counted, you've only been able to find 38 on the internet and through phone calls. There are several more. However, they have not been publicized. They may not be in very publication-oriented format also. In this backdrop, I'd like to say that it's not that heat action plans were never in currency. It is just that the formalized process which has been initiated in the recent years was not there earlier. Earlier, the point about how advanced adaptation is done is something that has been going on for several decades, where before every heat season, every district magistrate issues very clear instructions on maybe segregating times of schools and, shade, open work in the sun should be reduced. All those orders were issued, which is what will be done once an HAP is also there. However, HAPs will focus you on which part of your city requires more effort, what kind of active cooling and passive cooling efforts you can bring in, what kind of non-structural efforts you can bring in. So taking all your 3 points together, what are the challenges, what are the solutions, and what other ways by which you can reach out and use the heat wave mitigation funds. So the first thing that would be needed is in the process is how do you assess your city's heat action, heat assessment, the risk to the heat risk to your city. So you have already done one of the most monumental favors to every city by opening out your map. I have yet to see it. I tried to Google it while you guys were talking, but I just found the report of 68 pages. The two things that I couldn't find is one, the annexure one, which tells you which every city and district, what kind of impact it has. That I would definitely want to see so that we can also use it. And the second thing, which is I couldn't find on your website, is where this tracker is. We will definitely take it down to the districts and the states that this is the best place to start, because I don't see any other such tool available right now for any city. Suppose a small tier 4 city wants to make an HAP, and that HAP, where do they start? So that's where they're supposed to start. If they wish to get some support from us as NDMA or from the SDMA, we will always be there, but a nice place to start. The second is the funds that can come, the state disaster mitigation funds. Historically, the 15th Finance Commission gave 70% of its $30 billion funds to states directly. So of those 70%, 20 percentage points are relate to 20% of 70% is related to disaster mitigation. So there are a fair number of funds available with the states. The whole story is how do you access it? How do you make that project proposal? All these matters we have been working on. We've got a framework that we have finalized, which is currently in consideration in the Ministry of Home Affairs. So net, I think we are on a good path. We have our framework ready. The states have been allowed to spend funds on heat wave mitigation. Your proposal of at least 50% of, if 50% plus districts are under heat stress, those states could declare it as a hazard in the state list. That is also a very interesting proposition. I'm sure states will consider it. And the availability of your data right in front of your own eyes at the click of a button is something that I think you guys and whatever little work that we in policy have done together is taking this country forward on heat risk mitigation.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that, sir. And thank you for your appreciation as well regarding the study. We will be making the actual analyzed data open very soon, so that, I mean, we also want further agencies to make use of this. And that's what has been our philosophy always. So I will just move on with my next question to Ms. Sudharaman from State Planning Commission, Government of Tamil Nadu. Ma'am, in 2024, Tamil Nadu launched its heat mitigation strategy, which was also a monumental effort at the state level. So would you like to highlight some key points from the strategy that are focused on strengthening heat resilience of the state?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you to CEEW for organizing this virtual conference on heat, and congratulations on your report. We are really looking forward to have a look at the report and to get all of the data and the analysis that's come out of it. And now to talk about the heat mitigation strategy document, what we have built in 2023. We started working on 24 March, we had submitted it to the government of Tamil Nadu. And this document is the first detailed document that not just, came out with the strategy as such, but it went about doing a lot of research that and the analysis that went into it. We worked with UNEP, we worked with other agencies, we did a lot of UHIE analysis at the state level, and we also did a lot of analysis that assessed the land surface temperature and the average annual temperature, maximum and minimum temperatures were considered, and even the rainfall was also considered for it. And then we also went about doing the nighttime temperature the analysis. We also have a good interesting findings similar to your report. And all of this findings went into building the heat mitigation strategy. This heat mitigation strategy generally talked about action areas. We identified 3 different action areas. One is the health and well-being. I think already now we have already had enough of hearing from the expert on the health, how heat affects the health and all that. And the second thing was on the sustainable resources and the productivity, because still agriculture being, predominantly the primary sector, a lot of resources, especially water. For a state like Tamil Nadu, water is one important resource. With the increase in heat, there is also a chance of high rise in the drought conditions and the non-availability of water for both the human utilization as well as for agriculture has also been a serious concern. And apart from that, we are also a state that has been tropically located with a very long coastline. So the heat is not only the concern, it's also the humidity, which is also being a huge concern here, because adding on to the heat stress and the thermal discomfort factor, we went about analyzing how this thermal discomfort has been affecting the population, significantly the vulnerable population, especially the labor community who are being exposed to a lot of this heat stress and the heat discomfort and the thermal discomfort. And again, the other vulnerable population are the people of young, the age group and old age group, pregnant women, and people with other different illness and all that. So the strategy doesn't talk only about generally, heat, we all generally talk about the Department of Environment or Climate Action Mission. But unlike defining it to one particular department or ascertaining this responsibility with only one particular department, it talked about what are the roles and responsibilities of all the departments put together, especially the Urban Development Department, the Municipal Administration Department, the City Municipal Corporations, Health Department, Animal Husbandry, Forest Department, Environment. So we also elaborated on what are the roles and responsibilities of each of these departments. It's not something that it's something unknown or we have taken it up and therefore, this is something people have to be aware of. But traditionally, a lot of practices have also been, been adopted by each of these departments, but by also the vulnerable population to avoid or to control or protect themselves from the heat. So we also went about taking in those best practices that's been already adopted, and we also refer to some of the best practices being adopted by the other states, and we went about building the strategy. So the strategy became a kind of an excellent documentation that went about sensitizing people well within the state as well as outside the state for many other states to get inspired on how we went about building this heat mitigation strategy. And absolutely, when the state government had to declare a heat as the state-specific disaster, I think Tamil Nadu was a state that first declared the heat as a state-specific disaster, and which gave the opportunity of utilizing the state disaster management relief fund for the heat mitigation activities. So that became a handy document for this government to use the mitigation strategy. Having said that, we did not stop with the mitigation strategy. We extended the UHIE studies intensively, and now UNEP has supported the Chennai Municipal Development Authority, the CMDA, in doing a detailed ward level analysis of the UHIE. And now the findings mapping the hotspots of the UHIE at a very high resolution. This information is going into the third master plan development. Therefore, we are not just talking about heat as in silos, but integrating heat into the city level planning, as well as integrating into different mitigation and taking up different mitigation adaptation works as well. So having said that, we are also working on identifying the active cooling solutions, passive cooling solutions, building up, a good documentation or a handbook on what kind of solutions could be helpful at the institution level, at the city level, anybody could be using these documents to identify that, mitigating heat is definitely, the responsibility of the state. But having said that, it's also becomes the responsibility of every individual and the institution as well. So this document would definitely be a kind of a ready reference to all of these institutions who have kind of and say that they also could be a part of working together to have the heat mitigation works done at the state level. So and we are doing other works as well. We are working with different other organizations on doing the NBS solutions, how this nature-based solutions could be used in helping the heat mitigation work. We have also developed a framework for the tier 2 cities to take up NBS as a passive cooling solution to mitigate heat. And secondly, we also did analysis of mapping the blue-green infrastructure potential across the state. So all of this data, similar to one portal, what you're bringing with the open data, we are also building in this land use information system, which also is going to be explicitly housing all of the analysis that's been done so far with whatever data we are getting. It's going to be getting into this land use information system. Therefore, this will definitely be serving as a good tool with a lot of interpretation and visualizations, which will be helping the policymakers and the district level administrators to take up actions at their level. So these are the works that the state has done so far.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you for highlighting that. I think, anyways, Tamil Nadu has been at the forefront of disaster management when it comes to, say, cyclones or even floods, as well as now with the heat mitigation strategy, the efforts will be much more strengthened further to address the heat challenges. And I think it is really, a commendable effort that the Chennai City Master Plan is getting incorporated with some insights on heat islands and how do we address that kind of challenge at the local scale. I think that can really become like a model plan for various other cities in India as well. So thank you for highlighting those facts and figures. Now, I would like to again request Dr. Akash Srivastava for his intervention on health sector preparedness. So, sir, I would like to ask you, when it comes to heat as a challenge, I think the role of health sector preparedness becomes very important when it comes to the response part of it. And last year, I think we have seen a couple of examples of, say, RML Hospital establishing a heat stroke ward, AIMS establishing a heat stroke ward. But I would like to understand from you on what are some of the best practices that you have seen in the space of health preparedness, and also what are the ways in which we can scale these best practices to many other heat wave prone states in India.
So, thank you. First of all, I would like to bring a point of the presentation that was made today. Now, it was a very nice presentation, and I'm hopeful this report is going to be very useful for us in the health sector, for the state governments and the state health departments. But the point that I wanted to make is that in 2024, we were able to move further with all the states being able to finally launch their state action plan on climate change and human health. And all these action plans have got a one dedicated chapter on heat health. It's rather a heat health action plan in context for the given state. So we've shared that with NDMA as well. And the idea behind the development of these heat health plans by the state officials themselves was that the ones who had to take the responsibility of delivering these health services could own to develop these heat health plans. And it has been structured in a way in which it provides them not only an understanding of how the heat impacts their state, but also what roles and responsibilities lies with whom in the state to deliver pre, during, and after the season. Now, we have in these action plans use climate health risk assessment, whichever were available, including the ones that we have sourced from CEEW. And now we are in the process of asking the district government, the district health department to develop their district action plans on climate change and health. Will again have a heat health chapter, and we will definitely work with CEEW to see that the risk assessments that have been done by them become a part of this chapters. So in terms of the questions of the good practices is that what is important in the for the health sector is to first be able to recognize the problems that people face because of the heat impacts, and second, work towards helping them get out of those problems. So in terms of recognition, as we mentioned, we already have in place a surveillance system that as of now is in place across all the states and districts. And some of the states have been doing very good in this surveillance to bring to the knowledge of the people. Till the last year, we were mostly working on number-based reporting. We were only asking for the numbers of the cases and the death. But now this year, we started collecting information on case-based reporting, that is identifying details that of the given individual so that we know more parameters of how the health of the individuals are impacted by the exposure. And I will give a special mentions to states like Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Himachal Pradesh, Rajasthan, Telangana, Meghalaya, etc., who have 70 to 80% of their healthcare facilities reporting in 2025 on this portal. The other good practice around here is also to be able to provide relief to these patients who come. And as I said, it's very important that the relief is provided in the 30 minutes window when a patient is struck with heat stroke. Therefore, it's important to have ambulance preparedness and have a heat stroke units in the hospital which are able to provide the necessary measure of cooling to the patient. And in 2024, we provided explicit guidelines to the state governments, state health departments, how to work on it, and also provision for funds under the health program, the National Health Mission program of National Program on Climate Change and Human Health. And some of the states here like Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, etc., special mention for they have given us back an evidence of how a large number of such stroke units have already been put in place across their majority of the hospitals. And we're looking forward with development from other states also to come together on it. Another good practice is about building the capacity, the training of their health workforce. And some of the states again, like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, etc., more than 80% of their medical officers and health workers, etc., have already been trained in understanding the impact of heat on health. Some of the states like Kerala have gone to a large extent of community level training. They have reported back as to training the farmers, the NREGA workers, the PRI, the schools, etc. We know that the health sector has a very close link with the community. They, as a part of their outreach of health, they do an extensive IEC campaigns on matter of heat is extremely important for health. So all the health units across all states and districts participate in providing these messages. Fortunately, in the month of June, we already have an international UN Environment Day. We also have a Heat Action Plan Day. All of those days fall in the month of June. So it is a month in which we have extensive IEC going on across all the states and districts in terms of heat health also. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Akash, for highlighting the best practices from various states. I think that can definitely, lead the way in which other states can take up some of these activities and lead their own health sector preparedness enhancement within that particular state. Now, may I request Dr. Akhil Srivastav to come in on the topic of, say, IMD's role in publishing heat wave warnings, which has strengthened quite significantly in the last couple of years. But also, we would like to understand that what are the other types of forecasts and alerts related to heat that are issued by IMD on extreme heat and hot weather, and how states, districts, and cities can integrate these additional parameters into their preparedness and planning on heat action within their role.
Yeah, actually, with respect to heat waves, so most of the discussions are targeted to the short to medium range forecast, which is issued by IMD. However, IMD has got a seamless forecast strategy for heat waves, so which starts from the beginning of the season, whereby 3-month outlook is issued with respect to temperatures, as well as for the heat waves. So we try to identify the regions where the heat waves could be above normal, below normal, or within the normal range. And also we also provide the outlook with respect to temperatures. So it provides an opportunity for range of anticipatory actions, which include probably pre-season exercises, preparatory exercises, and a lot of drills, etc., and some stock taking exercises, etc. Now, after the seasonal outlook, which is issued by IMD, it is complemented by the monthly scale outlook, where for each of the month we issue what kind of heat wave scenario could occur, as well as what kind of minimum and maximum temperature scenario could be there in the country. So that is also a sort of which relates to some sort of anticipatory action. In addition to that, every Thursday we issue next 2 weeks heat wave probability, that which are the regions where you will have heat waves and what kind of probability is there. So this is actually the period that every Thursday we have got the idea about the regions for next 2 weeks, which could see with different probability the occurrence of heat waves. So that is when some kind of on-ground actions based on NDMA, SDMA's guidelines, heat action plans could be initiated. Then on everyday basis, we provide the heat wave forecast. It's the impact-based color-coded warnings. Now, when I say impact-based color-coded warning, it means that we also try to accommodate the impact of other meteorological parameters, which are like minimum temperatures, relative humidity, their coexistence, as well as persistence. So in that report which you have just mentioned, I saw that a lot of focus has been on the coexistence. That is a very important part. Also, probably some kind of persistence, if could be accommodated, that will make it probably more realistic in terms of impact. Now, what is happening is that IMD is issuing the forecast in color-coded format for heat waves, which includes maximum temperature. Basically, that's the objective criteria. When we are going for impact, we definitely include the concept of minimum temperatures, humidity also. Now, in addition to heat waves, as you have already mentioned regarding the minimum temperatures, which are a very crucial factor, and we're seeing a lot of disasters happening when minimum temperatures are also on the higher side. So we also issue the warnings for warm night and very warm night, okay, which is based on the minimum temperatures. Also, there's a new, in recent years, we've started a new warning concept, which is called hot and humid weather. Now, this is a very interesting and important concept because it is issued even when the temperatures, maximum temperatures basically have not crossed the threshold for the heat waves. But if they are on the above normal side, and also the humidity, relative humidity is also above normal. In that particular situation, it is treated that the conditions will have a lot of discomfort, and so hot and humid weather warning is being issued. Now, once these warnings are issued, I think these all warnings have to be taken into consideration whenever any planning and any mitigation or any preparatory measures have to be taken. In addition to that, like you already mentioned, Shivan has already mentioned regarding the percentile information. So there was a lot of agencies and NGOs also, and a lot of government agencies, they were requesting the data with respect to percentile information. So in addition to the regular temperature, absolute temperature, the departures, IMD is also issuing the forecast with respect to percentile, that is 90, 95 and 98 percentile of maximum temperature as well as minimum temperature. So we are trying to provide, IMD is providing a lot of information with respect to temperatures, which because their requirements are quite diverse from different agencies. So we are trying to cater and provide the information in as many ways in a more useful manner. Also, all this information I'd like to mention over here is that this is all available on geospatial platform. This is all available on WebGIS platform. So it is open, accessible to all the agencies, all the stakeholders who want to access it and use it. Also, we are trying to provide some kind of socio-economic information also with respect to these heatwave conditions. So we are providing, for example, railway network, roadways network, some these sports stadiums, main hospitals, etc., which are overlaid on these GIS maps for temperatures and warning. So it gives an idea that what sort of the socio-economic infrastructure is under stress whenever heatwave warnings are issued, so that accordingly, actions could be taken by the stakeholders. Also, we are last year we started issuing the heatwave sectoral warning bulletin, particularly for Indian Railways. So if those sort of requirements are coming, we are trying to cater it from IMD, and those could be utilized for different anticipatory as well as on-ground actions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Akhil, for really elaborating that at length with various efforts that the IMD has been taking. And I think there has been significant strengthening in the last couple of years. I think, and going forward, we will definitely see that, like, some of the data sets that have been made available to public gets much more used for further decision making and use at the ground level. So thank you for highlighting that. Now, may I request Ms. Sudharaman to come on the topic of, say, challenges of heat risk related data at the at the local scale, that is particularly used for planning and decision making, especially in the state like Tamil Nadu, which experiences both dry and humid heat. Ma'am, can you please unmute?
Yeah. Thank you, Vikas. I think this is a question which we all have been facing for those of us who have been working in this domain and looking for data. We know how challenging it is to get, we get the data, the spatial layers and all that, but to correlate it with the kind of socio-economic data is definitely quite challenging. As you rightly said in your report also, presently the census data, we have only 20 ENCA data, and we are only, using an extrapolation of it to do the analysis. So this is one challenge what we face as present. And to give, a kind of the advisories specific to a particular region, I think we need a hyper-local level of analysis to be done. I think Mr. Ajivan, who spoke in the inaugural session, also highlighted the need for the hyper-local level of analysis to be done. And to take up that kind of analysis, I think it's still very challenging. Even at state level, we are able to get in the data, the land surface temperature, all that is there. One challenge what I face right now is the access to the automatic weather station data. Though the IMD is providing, still the AWS station data is something still not being pulled at one particular point. So this data is also challenging. Secondly, now we have the data related to health. We have the data of how many people have got affected, and definitely, as sir said, Tamil Nadu has been pioneering, and now the Department of Public Health has given advisory to all the government and private hospitals to have an exclusive data reporting, especially for people who come with a lot of ailments that could be caused because of heat. And now, after heat being declared as a state-specific disaster, and ex gratia of 4 lakhs has been announced for deceased victims because of heat. So it becomes mandatory that we ascertain that the death is because of heat. This has to be validated for the victims to get avail this ex gratia. So that also gives in the need for evolving a protocol to be adopted by the Department of Health, and not just the department, but all the health institutions across the country, to have a protocol of standardizing what are the procedure to be adopted to declare heat-related ailments and heat-related deaths. So this is one other critical thing which we have to look at. And third thing is that heat cannot be looked as a silos. Heat is to be linked with a lot of other parameters. The data related to that, I think on cooling aspect, on the kind of infrastructure, the built area environment. Recently we went about doing an in-house study of a decadal assessment of the built area environment change in Tamil Nadu, correlating it with the land surface temperature, identifying the regional level, how this change has been, affecting this districts and all that. But still, for us to go about doing it at a city level, that needs a kind of a good resolution spatial image. Presently, the thermal images what we have access to, which comes with the land surface temperature or with the thermal band analysis, is not of a good resolution. I think it's only a 10K, 1 to 10K resolution, we have that data. But to do at a city level, to identify at a ward level, to incorporate that into the heat action plan becomes very, very critical, because giving a superficial recommendation or a recommendation at a city level will not really be sufficing, because we need to target it on the exact area. So I think these are the challenges that we face and as we have NDMA officials here and the advisors here, I have been requesting NDMA as well to see if this could be considered. And for your information, I'm also taking care of the forest fire the state forest fire officer in charge of that. And heat is something which is also causing the number of heat days is also becoming a huge concern when it is coming to the forest fire as well. So we know how forest fire has been growing intensively across the country, and it has been really causing a threat to our existing green areas as well. So I think this kind of a correlation, this kind of a multidisciplinary approach when we look at heat is becoming essential, and to have an aggregate of all of these data at one place becomes very essential as well. Thank you.
Yes, sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for highlighting those diverse aspects, as well as really the issue of forest fires, which is becoming very common in various states in India. And also, I think one of the correlation that we can see is definitely the increase in number of very warm nights that also we have seen across various Himalayan states as well, apart from South Indian states. I think that's going to have large impact on glacial melt, as well as on increasing number of forest fires that we might have to look at in the coming years. So thank you for highlighting that aspect. So just shifting the gears and moving the final question in terms of understanding some of the solutions that have been there in the space, like for example, the parametric heat insurance that has been piloted in a couple of places in India. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Rizvi, on it has been piloted, the parametric heat insurance has been piloted in a couple of places in India. And also, it is one of the key solutions when it comes to increasing fiscal resilience and avoiding livelihood loss. But in your view, what are some of the challenges that the scaling of this approach is not happening at that level? What would you like to highlight and your thoughts, sir?
Thank you, Vishwas. Thank you for downgrading me from doctor to Mr. But then the truth is always a good thing to follow. I would always have loved to be a doctor, but sadly I'm not. So that's a very interesting topic. For the past 2 years, we've focused a lot on disaster risk insurance, and one of the three big products we've been focusing on is parametric insurance. Now, we came across several challenges and several solutions and several experiments. As you correctly have mentioned, the Nagaland government's experiment, they are on their third year or maybe the fourth year of their experiment with parametric insurance for extreme precipitation. And SEWA, the nonprofit, is in its third year of experiment on heat risk parametric insurance based on simple thresholds as per IMD's data. IMD's very easily available data. Here, I'd like to definitely put in a word for what Dr. Srivastava of IMD was saying, that the kind of data that IMD has opened out on heat, on rain, on winds, on humidity, it is proving to be a game changer for the disaster risk insurance industry in India. And that is where all this data is being used to create all these new products. So in scaling up this product, it would never have happened if IMD had not put out this data. In scaling, that is the most important thing, that you have verified, credible, and almost real-time online data available from the IMD, which the insurance companies can use. So the policy issuer and the premium payer, both of them have ease of use, and both of them have trust in the system that is being used. In both cases of Nagaland and in SEWA, payouts have happened. Hence, the believability in the product has grown, and more people, especially in the SEWA case, where apart from just risk sharing, they have also done premium sharing. as in it's the workers who are paying 50% of the premium. So their stake in having that policy has grown. So their link directly with the company comes through, and that sustains the product. Now, there are 3 or 4 more such examples. Recently, I discovered of a private insurance company in India working with apple growers in J&K on a heat risk insurance program. Then there is a program of I think uh, United, the United Insurance Company. I'm sorry, I'm messing out the exact name of the insurance company, having issued a similar product on heat. Then there are about 5, 6 cases that have come to our knowledge which have actually succeeded. Now, your question on how to scale this up. Look, this is the best way possible, because if you pay premium and there's a hot day and you miss out on work, you get your 500, 300, whatever is you've booked your policy for, that much money you get in your bank account straight away. So it's a very easy system. There is no verification. It's only based on thresholds. This is the way to go for heat insurance, and it brings in a lot of resilience in this sector. There's a very good study written by 2 researchers, one of which is Dr. Somnathan of ISI, Indian Statistical Institute, in which they have proven in Delhi that 1 degree rise in temperature above a certain threshold leads to 6% loss in incomes of unorganized sector workers. So even if you have a 3 degree rise on a hot summer, as in last year, they would have lost 18 to 20% of their income. So that's a very good study because it connects, it brings in the numbers. So given this backdrop, we in NDMA have spoken a lot with the Department of Financial Services. The Department of Financial Services, I mean, I don't speak for them, but I can say that they are totally convinced that this is a good thing to do. The only issue is that government does not want to come forward and start providing premiums. Because if the government comes and gives premiums, then this much of premium is paid, the payout is always be lower. So essentially the excess surplus that is going to the insurance companies, it becomes a burden on the government's balance sheet. So the best way to go forward is for maybe a tapered down system in which an entity, a private or a public or a CSR based entity, provides the premium in the first phase. Next year tapers it down to 66%, and those who are insured, they pay the 33%. Like that, it tapers down in 3 years to 0. And then the insurance company and the insured person is directly connected. So that is the whole story. That's the way to go. We are working hard at it, and we would love for any new inputs to come our way. Thank you.
Sure, sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you for highlighting that. And also, we would be really happy to see the study of Dr. Somanathan as well to look into details of it. I think there have been some global facts and figures regarding livelihood loss, say the study of ILO that we always refer to. But I think something that is more indigenous and talks about Indian level statistics is something very crucial for us to understand the impacts of it. So thank you. I would like to thank all the panelists for joining us today. We are almost coming towards the end of today's event. And I'm really happy to mention that Dr. Krishna Vats, member NDMA, has also joined us. So may I request Dr. Krishna Vats to also switch on the camera, sir? Yes, thank you, sir. So I'll introduce Dr. Vatsa. So Dr. Vatsa has worked in the area of disaster risk reduction and recovery for at least last 25 years. He's currently serving as the member NDMA. Prior to joining NDMA, Dr. Vats worked as policy advisor, disaster recovery, Bureau for Policy and Program Support (BPPS) under UNDP in New York and Nairobi between 2015 and 2020. And also as a career civil servant, Dr. Vatsa joined Maharashtra Emergency Earthquake Rehabilitation Program long back in 1995, and have implemented a large-scale earthquake recovery program during the next 4 to 5 years in that time when Maharashtra had faced a severe earthquake. He has also served as the secretary to the government of Maharashtra in Relief and Rehabilitation Department, also as secretary in Rural Development and Panchayati Raj between 2006 to 2007. Before handing it over to Dr. Vats for his closing remarks, may I just request that we quickly play a trailer of a web series that we are coming up with on India's heatwave heroes, that highlights the different solutions that have been captured, like, that different agencies have been implementing at scale, and then that can definitely help many other decision makers and stakeholders in the scheme of things to look at how cooling solutions can be further scaled in the country. So just bear with me. It's a short 3-minute long video, and Shravan, you can let me know once you see it in full screen.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay.
You can play it. Vishwas, we cannot hear the voice. You need to play with the voice.
Oh, okay.
We cannot hear the audio of the trailer.
Okay, let me try one more time. Rowan, can you please confirm if you hear it?
Can you play? Not yet. Can you? We cannot hear it. I think we will try sharing from our screen as well.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Or maybe we can request Dr. Vatsa to deliver his closing remarks, and we can, in the meantime, figure out the video. So over to you, Dr. Vatsa, for your closing remarks. Thank you for joining us despite your busy schedule.
Thank you. No, thank you, Vishwasji, for the invitation. Thank you very much to the CEEW for this initiative. You have been a great knowledge partner, and we are working together on this important issue for quite some time. And I would like to acknowledge, I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, sir. Yes, you're audible. Thank you.
Yeah, so we have been working together on this heat action plan, heat adaptation for quite some time, and we have traveled together for long distance. I think it's always good to have so many knowledge partners, so many fellow travelers along when you are trying to deal with a difficult issue on our hand. The most important, the most recent initiative has been the heat action plan for the city of Delhi. And we have just prepared the heat action plans for all the 11 districts, and all the knowledge partners have been very, very actively and enthusiastically involved with the preparation of the heat action plan. And NDMA is also delighted to be associated with this citywide initiative. Now, it gives us a huge opportunity to learn from the entire exercise of planning. One, how fast have we prepared the heat action plan? How good and effective and practical these heat action plans are? And how are they translating into some actual and effective measures for the people who are affected by heat? So we definitely need to monitor, and it is easier when you are in. We are pursuing this in one city, looking at different parts of the city, and one part maybe is more affected compared to the other part. So we can look at the differential vulnerability much better. That certain areas which are more dense are definitely more affected. They need more relief, and what are the measures that would be more appropriate for those parts compared to the other parts which are less dense. So it gives us multiple angles to look at the whole issue of the efficacy of the heat action plan. But it also raises a bigger challenge, and perhaps this is something that we need to come together to address this, that we are propagating the preparation of more and more heat action plans across the country. And we have set ourselves a target that most of the districts which are in the heat zone must have a heat action plan. And the same goes for the cities. So now that so many heat action plans are available, should we not set up a digital platform where we can ask all the cities and all the districts to post their heat action plans? That would give us access to heat action plans at one place, perhaps, and that would give us perhaps a wealth of data to look at. We will also be looking at the different heat action plans, how good they are, because a lot is generally written about the quality and the effectiveness of these heat action plans, and sometimes these HAPs are criticized. So how do we help the cities and districts to prepare better heat action plans? And perhaps a digital platform for all the heat action plans would help us. So let's think about it. And in the days to come, we can definitely think of doing this. The second thing is that if we have the heat action plans, and now that we are getting the IMD advisories almost on a daily basis, we can think of a more dynamic advisory system at the national level. There are certain parts, there are certain districts that are more affected. We see it, we have the heat map available. So based on the heat map, based on the heat action plans that are available, we can issue more precise heat advisories. So let's think about that, how we can influence the entire country. We have the necessary data, we have the necessary expertise. All we need is to perhaps have some kind of a decision support system through which we can reach out to the people. So let's consider that also, a dynamic advisory system along with the digital platform. The third thing that I would like to highlight is the balance of preparedness and mitigation measures. At present, the heat action plans tend to be focused more on preparedness, which is just fine. People suffer because of the heat, so they need all kinds of palliatives. But at the same time, we also need to think of the mitigation measures, which are very, very important for the purpose of long-term adaptation. So all the vegetation measures, all the water conservation measures, all the habitat issues which improve the thermal comfort, they are extremely, extremely important for mitigation. We need to have the right balance. So we need to propagate these mitigation measures more actively. And perhaps the most important aspect is the cooling solutions. What are the cooling solutions that are available? What are the cooling solutions that are organically feasible and which are less costly and which are more affordable to the people? So we definitely need to have more deliberations on some of these cooling solutions. And how do we of course, we are discussing these cooling solutions, but these cooling solutions should become part of the heat action plan. And there should be some support for implementation of these cooling solutions. That brings us to the issue of financing, which we have been discussing for quite some time. And now we have kind of come to some kind of a consensus how the heat action plan should be financed, because this is also one of the criticisms of the heat action plans. They are paper plans, and there is very little resource that is available for implementing them. So now that we have taken up, we are going to pursue this, and we will see how we can set up a system which makes the catalytic funding available for heat action plans. And then we can always consider various kinds of cooling mechanisms to make the heat action plans more feasible. Heat action plans have also brought up the issue of providing some financial protection to the people who are affected. And we just talked about parametric insurance. And we have been discussing this also. But it is also always important to keep in mind that since heat action plan has a very kind of very temporal, the feasibility or the sustainability of a parametric insurance for a single peril like heat wave may not be very well established. We need to think of multi-peril insurance, which should bring in some of the other things which are very much related to heat waves. So if we are thinking of flash floods, if we are thinking of higher precipitation, which are also very much related to the heat, perhaps we can have a more affordable and more sustainable product. So let's think of heat wave insurance as a wider social protection measure rather than just one insurance product focusing exclusively on the excess of temperature. We also need to, along with the heat wave, if we're just dealing with the heat wave and leave out some of the other attendant or interconnected hazards, perhaps we would not be very effective. So all the issues that have been mentioned, the heat waves actually are leading to more fire incidents across the cities. They are also leading to fires in hospitals. They are leading to fires, the forest fires. They are leading to huge precipitation in urban centers. They are also leading to flash floods and some of the mountain hazards due to the snow melt. All of them need to be addressed in some form or the other. So heat wave is not just a single issue. It leads to a broad spectrum of hazards, and all of them need to be addressed together. Perhaps the heat wave provides the entry point, but we need to look at many of these things together. Let's continue to work on some of these issues. As I mentioned, we are making good progress, and we are always grateful to our knowledge partners for the support that you are extending. But we have a long way to go. And I think the first thing that we need to do, so now that we are preparing so many heat action plans, is to make sense of these heat action plans collectively, so that we not just we improve the quality of the heat action plans, but we also improve the effectiveness of these heat action plans. We also develop a good nationwide strategy of issuing the dynamic advisories for the heat action plans, the heat waves. So that's all that I would like to mention right now. Thank you very much. And if you have any suggestion for me, I would be happy to hear. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Vatsa, for really well articulating your response. And I have taken it as a, say, Panchasutri or Panchamrit of heat, because, there are 5 key dimensions that you touched upon. First of all, I think National Heat Action Plan platform is very important, because I think that can serve really a crucial role in serving as a knowledge sharing platform for various other cities who don't have a HAP yet. Also, the dynamic advisory, I think we have to move slowly into that space of decision support, getting more dynamic in the real-time basis, so that more and more forecasts can help us in addressing the issue of heat at risk. I think also this point of preparedness versus mitigation is very important. And in the panel discussion, we heard some examples from Chennai Metropolitan Authority having incorporated urban heat islands into their development plan for next 20 years. I think we have a lot of things to learn from such cities, so that this long-term mitigation becomes a usual practice when it comes to development of new city master plans and development plans. Cooling solutions becoming more affordable and more organic. I think that's the crux of the story also when it comes to different solutions of heat resilience. And I think you also very nicely touched upon the point of financing of HAPs. So when CEEW is developing, supporting various cities in developing the HAPs, we are also looking at the availability of state and national level schemes from which some sort of convergence can be achieved, so that the cities have some sort of motivation to implement the HAPs. And I think the last point on financial protection, looking at more of a multi-hazard insurance program rather than just focusing on heat, and heat could be one of the dimensions. So I think this is very well articulated, sir. Thank you for your closing remarks, and thank you for joining us as well, despite your busy schedule. So then I will just request Shravan to play the trailer of Heatwave Heroes, and if we can try that once.
Okay.
Yeah, audible. Thanks.
गर्मी में हम ज़्यादातर बाहर काम करने नहीं जा सकते क्योंकि लू लग जाती है।
Heat is rising all across India. It is actually life-threatening right now.
നിങ്ങൾക്കറിയോ ഈ കഴിഞ്ഞ 2024 ഇന്ന് വരെ റെക്കോർഡ് ചെയ്യപ്പെട്ടതിൽ ഏറ്റവും ചൂട് കൂടിയ വർഷം।
भारत के आधे से ज्यादा जिले जहां देश की 76% आबादी रहती है इस समय हाई से वेरी हाई हीट रिस्क पर है।
अप टू एंड 49 डिग्री तक जाता है।
क्या बात कर रहे हैं?
पीक पॉइंट आता है 49। जैसे हम किसी ओवन में बैठ के घूम रहे हैं।
जो आउटडोर पॉपुलेशन है, जैसे स्ट्रीट वेंडर्स हैं, देयर लाइवलीहुड्स इज डिपेंडेंट ऑन दैट। दे डोंट हैव एनी अदर ऑप्शन बट टू बी आउटसाइड।
This shelter can save your life from the heat. यहाँ से गुजरने वाले लोगों के लिए सिर्फ एक शेल्टर नहीं है, ये एक लाइफलाइन है।
The timely alerts help to ensure that people can plan their day accordingly and reduce the exposure to extreme temperatures and UVI radiations.
अहमदाबाद सिटी का टेम्परेचर 43.7 consecutive days 2 days के लिए अगर पहुंचता है, then they will get 750 rupees amount in their account.
अस्पतालों में हीट स्ट्रोक के लिए इमरजेंसी रूम लोगों की जान बचा सकते हैं।
गोटे ठंडा छात आ गोटे ठंडा घर बहुत जन को लाइफ सेव कर दे परिबो।
Cooperation is needed from the community, from the political leadership, even the scientific community. Everybody has to come forward with their contribution. We can at least fight rising heat problem.
फाइनल अभी आपका मिनिमम वाला चेक करना चाहते हैं फ्लाइट का अपना जरा से।
Thank you, Shravan, for sharing the screen and playing the video. So we want to also document some of the success stories of different cooling solutions that have been active in the country and that have been that have been able to reduce the impact of heat. I think that will show us also the way forward in terms of adapting to new solutions when it comes to enhancing the heat resilience. So with that, we have come to the end of today's event. Once again, I would like to thank all the panelists, all the speakers for joining us despite their busy schedules and spending some time with us, and all the audience who have joined us from various parts of the world for being with us in this journey of heat resilience. I think the report on heat resilience is online now on our website. We will be also happy to share the link through social media channels for you to further access it. If you would like to request for the analyzed data, please get in touch with us, and we will be happy to share that with you. With that, I would like to close today's event. Thank you.